I think we're good to start. Welcome to everyone joining session 10. My name is Gina. I will be your speaker session today. And this is the session on Coldtivate. So, what is Coldtivate and what is the onboarding kit? That's what we'll be talking through today. My name is Gina Yazdan-Pana. I'm a technical product manager with your virtual cold chain assistant. And in today's session, we're going to be diving deep into a few of the key aspects of the Your VCCA Coldtivate app and the onboarding kit. So you'll have the chance to learn about how Coldtivate is transforming cold room management and cooling as a service across West Africa and India. And then to complement how the onboarding kit can be used for onboarding onto all different aspects of the Your VCCA initiative. And as it's been mentioned in previous sessions, Your VCCA was conceptualized about 5 years ago by the Base Foundation and EMPA to support the reduction of post-harvest losses in the fruit and vegetables supply chain. And over the course of the last 5 years, we've piloted this project across India, Nigeria, the Philippines, more recently Guinea-Bissau and Iraq. And this initiative is multi-pronged. It's leveraging multidisciplinary technology across the use of business models and cooling technologies and power generation, which a lot of these topics have been already covered today. And a key part of this innovation is the digital technology that complements these operations, which is Coldtivate. So we'll be diving into the app, which is a digital and data-driven technology that's designed primarily for cold room inventory management, as well as market linkage and data intelligence. So much like today's event, that's explored a lot of these key components about building a cooling ecosystem from using feasibility assessments and design and procurement to financing, digitalization, data, and community participation. The second part of today's presentation on the onboarding kit is also built around those same pillars. So it'll also be introducing you to how you can take these concepts and then put them into practice. So with that being said, let's dive in. Before we get into the technical specifications of the app and how the technology actually works, I want to just spend a little bit of time reestablishing the details of the context in which this project operates to align on a clear definition of the problem statement. So as it's been previously mentioned, the project currently mainly operates in a few key piloting locations. And if we specifically look at the case of Nigeria as an example, it illustrates the key issues and the leverage points that are presented. So in Nigeria, 40 to 50% of the fruits and vegetables that are produced are lost before they end up reaching the consumers. And that loss primarily stems from the lack of proper storage and transportation facilities. Without access to cold rooms, what we see is that farmers and traders are compelled to then sell their crops for whatever low prices they can be offered. But if farmers could instead store a portion of their crops for longer periods and then be able to wait for favorable off-season rates, what we've seen is that they can potentially improve their income by 15%. And despite the emergence of numerous storage facilities that can support these farmers, what we also see is that the utilization of those rooms remains relatively low. There's a few different reasons that contribute to this, and they're distinct for farmers and for cooling companies. One of the primary reasons is that, as we've seen in the field, is a lack of trust in cooling rooms and manual operations. So this means that on ground, employees that are working in cold rooms have to record the produce that's being brought into the room manually in a physical notebook, and then keep track of dues and received payments. Manual operations that then take place in these cold rooms are not only a source of inefficiency because they're time consuming, they're also a source of risk because they expose cold rooms to human errors, which can compound, as you can imagine, as operations scale. So with this context set and understanding the problem statement, this is where your virtual cold chain assistant comes in. So as mentioned, your VCCA has 3 main pillars of work, and one of them is this middle piece, the Coldtivate app. The first is business model innovation, where we specifically collaborate with cooling companies that operate solar powered rooms and cooling as a service models. The second key component is this aspect of digitalization, where we have the Coldtivate app that helps to manage the cold rooms. That leverages, several different technologies, which we're going to dive into today, including digital inventory management, shelf life predictions, data analytics, and market linkages, ultimately to help cooling users make more informed decisions. And then this last major pillar is where we work with all of our stakeholders, such as cooling companies, to train farmers on the benefits of cooling, as well as to engage the local community. So in today's session, as it's been mentioned, we're going to be focusing on this second component of digitalization. So now we can dive into a bit about the design features of the Coldtivate app. I think a good place to start is the first question of how do you design an app like Coldtivate? And to place some of the design choices of the Coldtivate app into context, it's important to know how we've gone about developing the functionalities of the solution over the years. So over the last few years, we've spent that time carefully designing each feature in the Coldtivate app to ensure our solution is well suited to the end users, so the needs of the farmers and the small scale traders that would end up using it. So in that sense, it's been crucial to account for their needs every step of the way with a user-centered design approach. That means we regularly take in user feedback through multiple different platforms and formats, primarily including our piloting process, where we have training leads, we monitor the reception of different releases, and the use of each newly uptake, the uptake of each newly released feature over time. So now let's introduce ourselves to how the Coldtivate app essentially works. What is Coldtivate? So Coldtivate, as I've said, is an app designed to be used on ground to manage the day-to-day operations of cold rooms. And this is both from the perspective of the actual cold room and the company that manages these operations, as well as the end users, the customers. And we've designed the app to cater to these different user types separately. So first, we'll go through this list of each of the different user types. First, we have the cooling companies themselves. This is designed for company management teams, essentially. So an employee of a cooling company would initiate the registration process for their entire company, where they can build out their company's ecosystem by adding different cooling units and locations, inviting their employees, and they have the capacity to then assign operators to their different cooling units. So users that are in this category essentially have comprehensive access and overview of the check-ins and the checkouts and the finances across their different companies' cooling units. The second user type is the operator. So in contrast to the management team, we have operators who are typically employees who are physically located on ground at each cooling unit location. They are the ones that are leading and managing the day-to-day operations. So they're assigned to specific units, and they can utilize the app to digitally record the crate check-ins and checkouts. So as I mentioned before, previously, this would be done physically in a manual notebook or document, and now this can be recorded digitally, as well as being able to manage storage durations, tracking the number of crates that every farmer has, being able to forecast room occupancy for upcoming days, and being able to assess which crates are at the end of their shelf life. So a lot of information and decision intelligence is accessible to this user type. Lastly, we have the cooling user and the consumers. So this category represents both not only the farmers and the traders who would use the cold storage to actually store their crops, it also supports the customers who are interested in purchasing produce. These users can then view shelf life of either their crates or the crates that are for sale directly on their smartphones. And we have functionality for different types of users based on smartphone usage and ownership. So for users who don't have smartphones, but might use feature phones like Nokia, there's functionality where they can receive SMS notifications instead. And those that don't have phones can rely on their operators to help them out throughout this process. So there's different functionality for every different type of user, essentially. So overall, the way that this is designed for our end users, it's free to download, and it's currently available on both Android and iOS. And as just a general overview, on the right, we'll see a summarized list of how cooling companies and farmers can essentially benefit from the use of a technology like Coldtivate. And this is what we'll be walking through today across the presentation. But as a quick overview, it spans not only digital inventory management, but as I've already mentioned, it's shelf life predictions, it's impact data, and marketplace connections. And we're going to walk through each of these bullet points, and you'll be seeing the features of the app. And it's going to be broken down essentially in three parts. First, we're going to explore the various features and functionalities that are encompassed in this digital inventory management. Then the second key point is going to be the digital marketplace. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at how data can be used as collateral. So exploring the impact analytics that are also made available to our users. So now this is going to be your first glimpse at what the actual Coldtivate app looks like on the inside. So we'll start with the core digital inventory management piece. So at the heart of Coldtivate's functionality is this inventory management model. And if you take a look at the wireframes here on your screen, you can see how our users can view inventory in each room on the Coldtivate app. So what's key to take away from this screen is that we organize every piece of inventory in a room in the form of a card. So you can see these labeled cards with the green, the yellow, and the red next to them. So these represent each unique commodity that's owned by a unique user. And on the card, we display key pieces of information to all user types, including the crop, the storage fees that are being charged, the number of crates being stored, as well as key information around shelf life predictions. And that's what this color coding is meant to represent. It represents how much shelf life is left for each of these crops that are being stored. So to dive into that a little further, it's important to give context as well about how we do that, about what that shelf life prediction model is. So being able to predict remaining storage life is one of the key value adds of the Coldtivate app. So it not only keeps track of these items that are being checked in and checked out, it offers key insight into how much longer it's predicted that each of these crates of produce will remain fresh. So this will be a mini walkthrough of how that shelf life prediction works. So starting from the left of the screen, through the development of twin models, so digital fruit and vegetable twin models, our partner EMPA has been able to simulate the aging process of real life produce. And this is based on different data points, such as temperature, humidity data, and this is collected on ground physically from the cold room itself, using sensors that are placed inside the room. And so the next component is that this is then fed into the physics-based digital twin that simulates, mimics, and then predicts what the shelf life is. And although we refer to this term as shelf life, the app is actually calculating a time until pickup. So how many more days do you have until you can safely pick up this produce? And we factor in some buffer time to accommodate for some human factors. And then that information is fed back to our users as a time until pickup data point. Then that way our users, both our operators and our end users, are able to see that information and then make their decision based on when they want to come and pick up their produce and sell their produce. So going back to that color coding on the previous screen's wireframes, you can see that when the color coding is green, that means you have ample time left. When it's yellow, you're nearing the end of your storage life. And you can see directly on the screen, actually, that in this wireframe, yellow is representing that specific selection of carrots has 4 days left. And then when you have when you're at the end of your time until pickup period, that's when the card will turn red. Here you can see there's 0 days left. So currently the app features digital twins for 26 different crops. And to be able to ensure that information is accessible and understandable by all our users, we use images along with the colors, along with the numbers to indicate the urgency level of the pickup. So now we can dive into the next feature, of the Coldtivate inventory management and application, which is the market price forecasting. So our market price forecasting models use machine learning for a different type of information. So we've gone over how we represent digital inventory management and how that's coupled with our digital modeling to be able to predict time until pickup. This is complementary but distinct information that can also help decision making around market prices. So using machine learning modeling, what we do is we take in commodity pricing data for both the Indian and Nigerian context. And our team has then built out prediction models that are organized by commodity and by state for both India and Nigeria separately to be able to provide predictions around the future price of crops. So taking in historical crop prices based on regions and predicting what their future prices are expected to be. So here on the screen, you can see two views of that information, both from a trend forecasting view on the left, where you can see the anticipated forecasted price of tomato in the plateau region for the upcoming months. In blue, you can see the past prices, and in yellow, you can see the future forecasted prices. Then on the right-hand screen, you can also see a price ranking view. So a little bit of a different interpretation of the same information, where you can see an ordered list of most expensive prices for tomatoes across different, a subset of different selected regions in Nigeria, different states, for a range of a few different months that have been selected by this user. So it's been important to us to be able to expose this information to our users so that we can provide crop intelligence data directly into the hands of our end users, who can then use this information to decide not only where, but when and for how much to sell their crops after they've checked them out of the cold room. Yeah, so this now covers and concludes our main overview of the core functionalities of the what I call the inventory management component. And with that being said, now we're going to take a look at a little bit of a demo, putting this all together, which walks through the Coldtivate app to get a better feel for how the usage goes. So here we're playing the video where you can see that in this video, we're taking a look at an operator's account. So the operator of this room can see all the crates of produce that are stored in their room by all their users. So we're scrolling through the items in the dashboard, and we can see that they're owned by different farmers. They have different levels of freshness. They have different colored bands next to each of these cards. And we can also see detailed information about each commodity. So it's available by clicking into any card. Now, here you can see another sample of a different level of freshness for a different commodity. And now what we're going to do is walk through a sample check-in. So we're walking through the details of what a check-in looks like here, where you add crates of a specific commodity into your check-in order, and you'll signify certain specific details of information, like the planned number of days of storage and when the crop was harvested. And you can add multiple different commodities into a singular check-in. So this person is checking in multiple different crops at the same time, and they obviously have different specifications. And now their items are stored into the room. We can also sort the information based on different settings. And the next thing that we see here is that our user has access to different cooling units. So they can see items that are stored in a different unit simultaneously. And so this will be a different location. So there will be different farmers that are storing different crops and commodities here. And you can see the varying selection. In this example, what we're going to do is walk through a checkout. So we have a user that already has items that are stored in a specific unit, and they would like to take them out of the room. And so here what we're doing is we're selecting specific crates of the watermelon that they have checked in, and we're setting up their payment method, reviewing all of their details, and we're checking out their crops out of the room. So lastly, the last section that we're going to take a look at for this demo is additional features that are captured within this suite of inventory management tools. This includes a sneak preview of what our analytics dashboard looks like, so our impact dashboard, which has a historical view of aggregated metrics, as well as being able to take a look at this upcoming page here, which is going to be a different representation of a historical view of transactions where employees can see all the details of every individual check-in and check-out that's been made. Here you can see that with any given check-in or check-out, you can click into them and you can see the details of them. You can see what the movement looked like, so what specifically was checked out. And the last feature that we'll take a look at here is also occupancy planning. So this is how you can understand expected occupancy levels across a 7-day horizon. Overall, what we're seeing is how the app streamlines activity on both sides. So it organizes and simplifies information for cooling companies, and it also provides increased access to information for users. And overall, the aim there is that we're improving decision-making capacity for all of our stakeholders. So this covers that first section of features. The second section of features that we're taking a look at, the other component of our core functionalities, is the Coldtivate marketplace. So this is enabling and unlocking smart digital marketplace purchases directly through the cold room. So where that first section that we covered was taking a look at the core inventory management capacities, this is now looking at market linkages. So when users are storing produce in a cold room, what they can do now is additionally mark their stored crops for sale at a chosen set price. And as a result, any buyer accessing the Coldtivate marketplace can see those products that are listed for sale in cold rooms across Nigeria, along with their freshness values also labeled. What's important to note here is that our marketplace functionality leverages the same shelf life modeling from our inventory management system. And this means that whenever an item is listed for sale and available on the marketplace, you can also transparently see the quality of the freshness with the same indications of the coloring and the labeling. Ultimately, what the marketplace does is it allows for flexible purchases based on buyer needs. So that means that buyers can either purchase by the kilogram or make a bulk order. They can purchase for one or many cold room locations, and they can coordinate to either pick up their produce, keep it in the cold room, or arrange for delivery. So we offer a lot of customization there. And all of these operations are conducted digitally, with the marketplace being totally connected to Paystack, which is a digital transaction platform. This means that manual management of payments is not necessary, and users don't need to even physically walk into cold rooms to enable those transactions. On the right side of the screen, what you can see is we have our two key use cases that we envision. So it's the fact that we can support operationalizing direct sales between farmers or traders and their potential buyers. Or we can also leverage the cold room operator as a facilitator in the middle to enable the sale. So as I mentioned, currently we're piloting the marketplace feature exclusively in Nigeria, where we have a few pilot partners such as Cold Hubs and Leap Energy, working with them closely since the inception until the current launch. And they've been crucial for us to better understand and design this feature. So now, once again, to really hone in on the marketplace feature, we'll go through a demo of the functionality. And so here, what we can see is in this video, our marketplace dashboard, which has some similar, visuals as the inventory dashboard. And here's where you can see all items that are listed for sale. You can see crops are organized based on which cold room they're in. And the items on the marketplace are listed similarly to items stored in the room with that key shelf life prediction information. Here, what we're doing in this video is walking through a sample purchase. So we're adding a desired amount of different produce into our shopping cart, and the user has several different filtering and sorting options that they can navigate through to filter their search. So here, what we've been doing so far is selecting different commodities and adding them into our cart, but here is where you can also filter your view if there's specific information such as specific crops you prefer to see. You can also sort those results based on price and so on. Now, on that top right corner of the screen, we're entering our shopping cart. So this is a review of all of the items that we've selected. And now we're moving through the purchasing process. So we can see all the details of the transaction that we'd like to make. And as I mentioned here, we have to select our pickup type. So we have a few different options. And here our user is choosing to pick up their produce today. Now we move through that purchase. And this is where we enter our Paystack portal. We're representing a sample transaction. And now you can see a review, essentially like a receipt, like a thank you for ordering screen that has an overview of all of the details of the purchase that you've made. It's also important to note that users can then also get a full accounting of all of their sales and their orders, also based on status. So here you can see all of the sales that this user has made, but you can also see all of their orders. And you can see that some of them have been fully paid, some of them have been canceled or expired. So this is great for being able to manage a full accounting of all of your purchases and all of your sales through the marketplace as well. And you can click into any of these cards and see the same full details that review that transaction as well. So that concludes the demo of the marketplace feature. And with that, we're ready to dive into the third component, which is the data analytics, the data to kind of enable impact that the Coldtivate app offers. So here, with this third section, we're going to explore how data is collected in the app and then how our users can create impactful analysis. So there's two key features of the app where we aggregate and analyze data that are shared for our users. We have two dashboards that are designed for two different audience types. First, we have the impact dashboard, which is designed for cooling companies to get an aggregated view of all of their activity. That's the screen on the left. And this includes information around occupancy levels, their most stored crops, food loss, revenue impact, as a result of using Coldtivate and cold storage. We also track CO2 emissions, which is estimated with our life cycle assessment methodology, which has also been discussed in a session today. And then on the right screen, you'll see our similar view, which is designed for a different audience, which is called the Farmer's Dashboard. So this is designed for each individual farmer to get an aggregated view of their activity. So they can see what crops they've stored, how long on average they store items for, as well as some of that information around food loss and revenue impact that they've personally experienced as a result of using the Coldtivate app. So to get a better understanding of how we're able to even show this information, it's important to note that we collect this data through a combination of two key pieces of information. First is the inventory data that's just directly tracked through the Coldtivate app. So that's through check-ins and checkouts that the operators are digitally recording. And then the second component is through digital surveys that we send out to our users. So this is done both before they store in the room to get a baseline and also after they've checked out their crops and they've sold their crops to get an understanding of how that activity is changing. So the way that our team sees this is that this is a really high value information to be able to provide our users with a few different potential use cases in mind for how the data is relevant and how it can be particularly used as collateral. The first example here is that impact data that cooling companies can then leverage to prove their impact, prove their credit worthiness, and be able to attract investments. So these cooling companies that we work with are their own independent businesses as well. And so it's important that they're able to showcase their growth independently. The second component is being able to offer a view into gender disaggregated data. So this is to better understand challenges that are faced by our female users versus our male users and be able to tailor capacity building efforts. In a lot of the contexts that we operate in, a main goal is being able to increase the participation of female users. And through data like this, we can get a clear insight into where some of those gaps are. And lastly, it's to build a track record for our farmers of their cold room usage and their payments. And this can potentially be leveraged to unlock access to microcredit and loans. So not only are we thinking about this from the perspective of our cooling companies' businesses, but also from our farmers' business operations as well. So with that, that concludes the walkthrough of the main components of the Cultivate app. And now that we've reviewed these main features and functionalities, you might be considering what happens next. So if you're interested in exploring Cultivate more, here we've listed a few items that you can consider as next steps, as suggestions. And I'll walk through each of these four considerations. So the first consideration is that if you are interested in exploring Cultivate for yourself, as I mentioned previously in the presentation, the app is free to download and use on both the App Store and the Google Play Store. And not only that, it's also available in over 10 languages. That includes English, Hausa, Igbo, Portuguese, French, Hindi, Arabic, really trying to tailor to the different contexts that we operate in. Now, the second consideration is that this digital model is relevant and applicable across different use cases. So although the key use case that it's designed for is for stationary cold rooms, there's a broad range of applications and expansion opportunities to consider. So that may also be relevant to you if it includes, the opportunity to model this baseline for refrigerated trucks or logistics services, not only the context of a stationary cold room. Third, is that if you're interested in diving deeper into the actual technical specifications of our code base that has built out this Cultivate app, we have also recently released our app code as open source. So for some, you may be thinking, how is that different than the app being free to use? So the important distinction is that now with the open source code, you can adopt the app and tailor it to your organization's needs, which means that you wouldn't just be using the app from the App Store, you would be able to change and design new features and extensions. We're currently in the process of actually running an incubator with a selection of organizations to support them to deploy their own version of the app and integrate it with their existing suite of services. So if that's something that you're interested in, you too can access this open source code for free. Lastly, we have launched the Your VCCA Onboarding Kit, which is what we're going to be walking through now. This is a resource that's designed to follow you through the full onboarding process, to be able to follow and replicate the Your VCCA model, not just the digital component of the Cultivate app, but end to end. This spans across the entire process. Onboarding onto the Cultivate app is included, but also across cooling as a service model and capacity building as well. So now what we'll do is we'll dive a bit deeper into the actual onboarding kit itself and how it supports this adoption. So as it's been mentioned, the onboarding kit is more than just an informational resource tool. It's organized by every single step of the process required to onboard onto this intervention, and you get a guided experience to adopt the model. So what that means is that each section of the onboarding kit is organized to take you through each of the specific topics, where you'll be guided through learning material, in addition to video content, informational glossary sections for key terms, frequently asked questions from our stakeholders, and you have full customization to track your progress through the material. Looking specifically at kind of the two aspects of the Cultivate app that we've talked about today, there's two key parts of the onboarding kit that are relevant to Cultivate. First is Cultivate for cold rooms, and the second is the Cultivate code. So Cultivate for cold rooms, this orange section in the middle of the screen, is going to walk you through how to sign up, set up, and make the most of the app's features. That would be from impact tracking to the real-time crop insights that we talked about. And this is going to be demonstrated through the perspective of each of our different user types. If you want to also go a step further, then at the very end of the Cultivate for Cold Room section, we also have a test where you can become certified as a Cultivate trainer. For the next section, this green section on the right side of the screen, access to the code and documentation. Not only can you actually access the open source code, you also have full access to documentation of the app code. This is made available so that we can empower teams to seamlessly integrate the platform into their existing systems or build new tailored features. So this open source model essentially encourages customization, easy integration, collaboration, so that we can allow companies to co-develop and maintain the code base together. And by supporting local ownership and innovation, the aim with Coldtivate's open source code is to drive greater efficiency, reduce environmental impact, and promote more cooling, sustainable cooling solutions. And as I mentioned, to reiterate, there's two distinct ways with interacting with the model. These two sections kind of display that succinctly. So the first is as it's currently released, the actual app itself, where you can learn more on how to use it from the onboarding kit tutorials. And the second, the Coldtivate code, is a technical approach. So that would require, for example, a team of engineers to take the code directly for further customization based on your own business needs using the open source material. So if you're interested in exploring this, I highly recommend checking out the onboarding kit. You can see the link at the top right corner of the screen, where you can visit kit.yourvcca.org to learn more. But we'll also be walking through some of it together right now. So what I'm going to be showing here is another little demo where I'm going to be walking you through how to navigate the website. So the Coldtivate for Cold Room section specifically. Here, we're going to log in with your account, and you'll see the general welcome screen. And you see all 5 sections of the onboarding kit, where the orange, as I've mentioned, is Coldtivate, and the green is the Coldtivate code. But we have the other sections, such as the awareness raising, available as well. So what we're going to be doing in this little demo is we're going to be walking through the Coldtivate for Cold Room section specifically. And you can see that we have an introduction to the concept of Coldtivate, and you can select which perspective you really want to dive in, either from the registered employees or the cooling users and operators. Here, when you move through the material, you can see how it's organized with frequently asked questions, as well as video content, where you can watch and learn basically how to move through every single part of the process. So what you can see from there is that it's a step-by-step tutorial. It takes you through the usage of every section of the app itself. And as you move through each of the different sections, you can track as you complete them and as you favorite them. You can move back and forth to navigate each section of the learning material. You can see those buttons there underneath the video where you can mark the material as favorite or complete. And then here at the bottom of the screen, we can also navigate through each of the frequently asked sections for the learning material as well. This model is similar for both the cold room operators and the cooling users and consumers. And there you also have the ability to track your video material as favorited or complete until you reach the completion. Here at the bottom of the screen is where I mentioned we have the training test. So you can move through a Coldtivate Trainers test to get officially certified, um, which can be used by any of the cooling companies and users that you work with. And the next piece that I want to highlight is that although that's, how the model of the Coldtivate section looks and works, it follows a very similar pattern for the other sections of the onboarding kit as well. So here we have our business model section where you can see the same format is applied. You have each section of the learning material. You can keep track of it by tracking it as complete or favorited. And at any point that you have questions, you can navigate through the frequently asked questions as well. So that covers kind of the main core components of the onboarding kit. But as I mentioned, it's free and easy to access at kit.yourvcca.org. So I definitely recommend everybody check it out and navigate through it if it has a relevant use case for you. It's very easy to navigate, and it's even easier to understand once you navigate through it for yourself as well. I quickly also want to highlight a couple of the key components of the open source code as well that also supports the adoption. So this is available and accessible through the onboarding kit as well, but I just want to highlight snapshots of a couple different pieces of material that are available there. So the open source code, as I mentioned, is complementary but distinct, and it has a different use case to better understanding Coldtivate. On the screen, what you're seeing here is that this is the actual repository itself of the Coldtivate app code. And you can see that there are 4 main code bases that make up the open source code. We have our backend, we have our Coldtivate documentation that goes extensively into the details of the functionality. We also have our knowledge hub material, which is learning material for our end users. And we also have the mobile app, which details actually how to build out that front-facing component of the built-out technology. So if you have, a technical team that's interested in exploring the open source code, then they have access to the full suite of services here. And again, this is accessible through the onboarding kit as well. And just to showcase, the potential for impact of the open source code, I also just want to take a moment to highlight that the Your VCCA team, as mentioned, is currently actually running an incubator program for 6 companies. And this is including not only Nigeria, but we're also working with companies in Ghana, India, and the US to work together. And the program is designed to basically move these companies through the onboarding, learning, and implementation process of the Coldtivate code step by step, so that we can really ensure successful and sustainable adoption for each of these piloting companies. And each of these companies has been carefully selected through an application process where we've really learned their key use cases for the Coldtivate open source code. And what's interesting to see is that they each vary a little bit from each other. So there's more than just the base case that we've presented for how to use this material. And this was just a quick snapshot of a recent article that we published highlighting each of these teams. If you'd like to learn more, I definitely suggest checking that out as well. It's a great inspiration for other potential use cases on how to leverage the open source code if this is something that's of interest to you and your team. And again, it's been consistently on the top corner of the screen, but if you're interested in checking out any of this material, you can visit kit.yourvcca.org to learn more. Now, with that concludes and covers all of our Coldtivate material for today. I hope you enjoyed, and please don't hesitate to ask any questions. We have just about 10 minutes here at the end of the session to go through any questions that anybody has. But before we get into that, thank you so much for joining this session. And don't forget that you can keep exploring all this material and more through the onboarding kit, through the free to use app, and through the open source code material. If you have any questions outside of this session today, or you need more information, you can also get in touch with us at info@yourvcca.org. We have our contact material on the top left corner of the screen here. So yeah, I think now we can take a pause, and I can see if anyone has any questions where they'd like to learn and understand more. I'll just take a look here. So I see some questions coming in. I'll start answering some of them, but please feel free to continue to ask questions if you have any as I go through some of these questions. I'm seeing here a first question. how can the app be used by users without a smartphone? Does the marketplace work for them? So to answer that question, essentially, we've identified that there are certain farmers that don't use their a phone whatsoever, and to cater to those farmers, what we've essentially offered to and made available is that those farmers can work directly with their operators at the cooling unit to be able to carry through their operations. And so we have specific functionality set up in the app where if there's a user without a phone, we have a section in the app where we can keep track of their usage. And so essentially, for them to be able to use the app, they would need to work with the operator, and the operator will need to move through the functionality for them from their own phone. Technically speaking, a cooling user can engage with the marketplace if they don't have a phone as well, where the operator can support that functionality. But keeping in mind that in the marketplace, our cooling users are split into sellers and buyers. So typically, it would be a farmer that would be a seller, and it would be just a consumer that wants to be a buyer. From the farmer's perspective, it's very easy for the operator to continue to support them through that process where they can label their items for sale. They can label the farmer's items for sale on the app for them. Um, I think the functionality is not as accessible for somebody without a smartphone if they're interested in purchasing from the marketplace, because those transactions are completed digitally. They would need to be able to access the app. But what we've understood from our research and our piloting is that the key users that are interested in using the marketplace functionality to purchase produce from are typically users that do have access to smartphones. I think that's a great question. The next question here is the app only available in English? So we mentioned this briefly in the presentation, but the app is actually available in over 10 languages. We've currently designed those available languages based on the piloting locations and the users that we work most closely with. Hence, we have a varying degree of languages available for the Nigerian context, the Indian context, as well as in Portuguese and French and Arabic. That's also one of the key components of the open source platform. If you're working in a context where we don't offer that language, it's available for your customization to add whatever language it is that you would need. I see this next question. How can we join the Coldtivate incubator? This is a great question. So currently this cycle of the incubator is actually already running. So at this point, you would be unable to join the current incubator that we are running. If you are interested in learning more about the open source code and about the different kinds of support that may potentially be available, I definitely suggest reaching out to info@yourvcca.org, and we can continue that conversation. We're always excited to learn more about any organization that's interested in collaborating with us and adopting the material. So we definitely want to hear from you and your use case. Just scrolling through to look at some of the other questions that are coming up. I can see, how can I start using the application? So to get started with the application, just directly using the app itself, as I mentioned, the app is available both for iOS and for Android. So that means that you can navigate to the App Store for Apple or the Google Play Store for Android, and you can simply just search up Coldtivate. I see now that the actual word cultivate doesn't appear on this final thank you screen, but I'm just going to navigate maybe to a previous screen just in case it's helpful to see. Yeah, there we go. That's a screen where you can see the word cultivate. So that's how you would spell cultivate, and you can search that up and you can download. It's free to download, and at that point you can start setting up your account based on your use case. It depends, if you're a cooling company or if you're an end user yourself. But through the material in the onboarding kit, you can navigate which user type is best for you, and you can set up your account. Just scrolling through some of the other questions that I'm seeing popping up. Now I also see, when do you expect to roll out the marketplace feature to other countries, say to East African countries? So as I've previously mentioned, we're currently piloting the marketplace exclusively in Nigeria. I think we are in the process on an ongoing basis, on a rolling basis, to assess and understand different contexts that we can potentially operate in. Whenever you're selecting a location to pilot your feature in, it's important to be able to gauge a lot of factors: the feasibility, the stakeholders and the partners that are available. Currently, at this moment, we don't have any explicit plans to expand beyond Nigeria, but given the right opportunity, I think those collaborations are always of interest to us, and we're curious to learn more. Um, and now I see one last question popping up here. Can you use the app for refrigerated trucks? Yeah, so I think that's something that our team is really interested in to kind of navigate more. I think it's a very high potential area, particularly because logistics and transportation is where you often see a lot of food loss and spoilage throughout that transportation process. Um, and as we mentioned before, although the app is designed for stationary cold rooms, a refrigerated truck is essentially just a moving cold room. And so the functionality of how you would connect it to the Coldtivate app, including the temperature and humidity sensing, and the like orientation and organization of crates within the room, technically will all operate in the same way. So if you're interested in using it for a use case where you have a refrigerated truck, it's absolutely feasible as a place to start. So I definitely suggest exploring that more if that's something that you're interested in. Um, that kind of covers all of the questions that I've seen rolling in over the course of the past 10 minutes. Of course, if anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to um, stick around and answer a few more questions with the last remaining 5 minutes that we have. But if no other questions end up coming to mind, then I definitely suggest, if you're ready to dive back into the rest of the summit, to head over back to the main event page. So you can use the same link that you received in your registration email, just to navigate back to that main room that you were previously in, for the final pieces of the Your VCCA Summit back in the main room. So thank you so much again for joining this session on Coldtivate, and I hope you enjoyed.